Radio
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
That's a sex machine to all the chicks. You're damn right. Who is the man that would risk his neck for his brother, man? Can you dig it? Cat that won't cop out when there's danger all about. Right on. You see, this cat chef is a bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
What I'm talking about, Chef?
Then we can do it.
He's a complicated man, but no one understands him but his woman.
John Chef.
And
Yeah, you're on.
And good morning, Westfield. I know this is not my normal opening song, so
You know what? And I'm also not hearing myself very well here, so I
I'm not
was
hearing
a little
myself
off.
very well.
Turn
either.
yourself up a little bit.
I know it.
Turn me up too.
You know what? I thought Bobby was deaf, so I was just.
Is that any? Oh, there I go. Can you hear yourself now?
Much better.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, we're turned down from the Bobby G show that preceded us. So anyway, good morning, Westfield. You are listening to a special edition of Rock on Westfield with your host, Harry Rock. And
I think we're calling this Harry Rocks the Superintendent Spotlight.
And the Superintendent Spotlight. Well, I've already got that
I
figured
mashed
in here.
it up.
No, I got it mashed
Thank you.
up as well. And it was nice seeing the Superintendent Spotlight graphic on the screen this morning. I don't think we've seen that in a while.
No, not
Been since
March.
February.
February.
Almost since February.
Yeah.
With me in the studio is Westfield Superintendent. Excited to have him, Stefan Zaporowski, and joining us on Zoom, and we've had her a couple of times already on our show, is Susan Dargy, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And the other voice that
yes.
you're hearing out there in the hinterlands of the airwaves is our outstanding producer, P. Coles, in the other room, pushing all the buttons.
I gave up my digital video effects box so Sue could be there the whole time.
Well, we're
Thanks,
thrilled to have
Pete.
Sue. Absolutely.
And welcome, Susan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me back. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we must be okay. Harry keeps inviting us back.
Yeah.
So we must be doing all right.
Yeah, I know it. Actually, I'm impressed that you allow me to be your host here. It is Wednesday, August 13th, and you are listening to Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 and WSKB 89.5 FM. And we are broadcasting live this morning from Studio 120, located in the awesome Westfield Technical Academy. So excited to have the superintendent and one of his top lieutenants here, Susan Dargy, with him this morning. It's hard to believe that schools have been closed since March 16th. And I remember that date also well. My birthday was on the 13th, and we were just talking about, what's this corona thing that's coming around? And then all of a sudden on the 16th, the whole world kind of shut down. And Superintendent, you were on my show and with Susan as well on April 29th and June 3rd, and you and your staff had been working really hard to get the remote learning model going as an effective alternative to being on the classroom with face-to-face instruction online. And you had been hopeful that the schools were going to reopen, and then the governor decreed that, no, we're staying shut through the end of the school year, and then the idea was that hopefully we'd be reopening come the next 2 weeks or so, and now that's changing. We're going to get into that in just a moment here, but
Does it feel like Groundhog Day?
Every day feels like Groundhog Day.
Seriously.
oh my gosh, it's been unbelievable. But Monday, this past Monday, August 10th, was a significant date with the Westfield School Committee voting on the final plan. And we're going to get to that in just a moment on what the new school year is going to look like. But today, we're going to hear firsthand. We're going to have the most current and most updated information. And I think this is the plan that you can pretty much take to the bank with you at this point for parents, students, teachers, administrators, staff, and what you can expect in September. So welcome back, Stefan and Susan. We're so thrilled to have you. Before we do start talking about the opening of schools, though, I wanted to talk about, we had some really exciting activities over the summer, and that was the graduation of all of our seniors. And I wanted to just, hear how that went from your perspective.
So I think it went well. Graduation for the Tech Academy was on July 30th. It was also broadcast. I want to thank Pete because he had it broadcast on a radio station, but also on YouTube. So we had the graduates in chairs and then the stage by the front sign at Westfield High School, the one that lights up.
Right.
And the students were seated and the families were in their vehicles behind a behind tape to make sure that they didn't come to be
Come
close to the
rushing,
graduates.
yeah.
You come rushing in. So the ceremony went well. I think a month, really almost 2 months late, but at least we were able to have the students sitting together and on the committees that we had put together, and that was led really by Joe Langoni, principal of the Tech, Chuck Jendrysik, the principal at the high school, and Ray Diaz on the school committee was also involved in planning that event. And I think, except for a last-minute move on Pete without telling him, we did all right.
Well, you know what? Hey, listen. Luckily, I have all kinds of stuff in the closets and things, and I pulled out a microwave link to keep the internet going all the way out there. So
Very nice. Pete, you roll with the punches like no other, so thank you.
Good
Pete's
lordy.
amazing.
Yes.
Right.
thank Kenny and our teacher Joe Douglas for helping out too. They
Yes.
did, and also Mark St. Jean.
Yes.
Yeoman's help getting that thing together in very, very hot weather. And the day of the Tech graduation, I had to cover a fire department meeting, a fire commission meeting at Fire Station 2, and then the day of the high school graduation, I had to cover an election commission meeting while they were setting up for the other meetings. So the business of government didn't end well, even though we
Just
had
because we were
graduations.
graduating.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
So, I think it was great, and I think what was great about it is some districts really just mailed home the diplomas, and I don't think that that's very ceremonial whatsoever. I think that's
Right.
actually, although, you get in your diploma, but, so we were able to hand out diplomas. Same with the high school. I will comment, that concerns that came to me were folks not wearing masks, and even though we had requested everyone to do that. And I think that's part of a societal problem, not in probably less in Massachusetts than in other states, but we know that wearing masks is the best way to reduce the transmission of
Absolutely.
COVID. So
Right.
if you're not wearing a mask, you essentially could be putting other people at risk. And I just, it happens, and it happened at graduation, and it was a little frustrating, but there really also isn't much that we're able to do about it.
Right.
And I'm not making this political whatsoever. I'm not
Right.
trying to do that. I'm just simply stating that we know, every research has shown that if you wear a mask, it helps reduce the spread. So, and that really kind of plays into, and we can talk about that later, about our school policy coming
Right.
forward as well.
Right.
And, listen, I don't love wearing a mask, Harry. I know you don't love wearing a mask, especially when it's hot.
Yeah.
It's even worse. But you do what you have to do, and I'm not sure what else we can say about that. In my job,
If
and
you don't want to wear a mask, isolate at home. Stay there.
exactly. And really, our policy for the school next year is that if you don't want to wear a mask, you're going to have to go remote. I can't put the other students at risk because of a political stand, or you hear people say that COVID is a hoax and all of that. I'm not getting into that. I know people have died, and I know people have gotten sick, and the research we're seeing actually is more and more kids are now getting COVID.
Yeah.
And you see schools and camps closing across the country, and I realize Massachusetts is not in a bad, or at least Westfield is not in like one of the more severe colors. We're green, but if you look, there's yellow all around us.
Yeah.
And people travel back and forth. So really, I just have to, and I know you're going to say it again later, but people, wear your masks.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's much more to say about that.
Right.
But graduation was great.
How many students did you graduate?
So there were about 125 graduating from the Tech, but only 96 came. But keep that in mind that some of them have already left for military. So we actually had a special military ceremony here, probably around June 10th, I think it was.
Oh, really?
We did.
Mid-June, yeah.
Yeah. So we did honor those kids, but if you're going into the military, you're leaving for basic training, whatever you're doing before the end of July. So, and that was our concern too. Like people were asking, what if it rains on the 30th and 31st? Because that's when we had it. Listen, it didn't. So, but if it did, rescheduling it was going to be a nightmare, and trying because there are some kids that are going physically to college, and they'll be leaving if they, in the next week or 2 weeks or so on. So, no, I think
I'm actually surprised about the college thing because I know a lot of colleges have gone virtual, at least for the first semester.
Right, but I was actually talking to the new president at Westfield State yesterday, and they're bringing about 1,600 students back, Pete.
Are they really going to go ahead with that?
As of yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a great idea.
Springfield College is bringing students back, and I think there's a couple others, but then there's plenty that aren't. So, it's just...
It's a mix. And you know what
tough.
people are saying, too, is, okay, so you're going back to live on campus, but essentially you're isolated to your room because
Right.
the maintenance crews at the colleges can only do so much
Right.
to try to keep
Right,
people
and most
safe.
of the dining commons are open for like grab and go meals. They're
Right.
not going to be. You're not going to sit there. I know Mount Holyoke is that way, and I think Smith is the same thing too. If you're coming to campus because you have research projects or something like that to work on, you're not going to be sitting in a dining hall. You know,
Right.
those are all going to be closed essentially.
Well, and and Ray said it at the Westfield High School graduation, and he said it at school committee too. And he's, and he gave why, and I never understood. Pete, the phrase "embrace the suck," and you remember
yeah.
what he said. He talked about the mask, and that's how it comes out in the military. But
Yep.
obviously, that's a different meaning here. And I will say this for the record: I am tired of embracing the suck. I want to get back to normal. Susan, you want to get back to normal?
I want to get back to normal.
This
Yeah.
has to stop, and it's just it's. I understand people are short fused these days, and we've been going through this now for many months. It feels like an eternity,
Right.
and even all the planning that we've had to do around this has been exhausting.
You've had to rethink the entire way you educate.
We have, and it's
I
been
mean, seriously, you had to start from square one.
yeah, and
and
it's
build
been
it back up again.
difficult. And we're not making everybody happy. We can't, and I know that there's no right decision in this
Right.
situation.
Right.
So it's just I can't wait till it's over.
Yeah, I know.
I want to be 5 years from now saying, "Remember when?" Right,
Yeah.
Susan? Remember when we had to wear masks everywhere we went?
5 years. Let's hopefully it's 6 months.
Yeah,
that
I'm
we
hoping.
get back, right? But I don't know. We got a long way to go to get a vaccination and
We do.
a vaccine rather, and then being able to distribute it, and then hopefully it's going to be effective. So a lot of questions going down the road.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I was thrilled that you were able to pull off the graduation. I mean, it's such a milestone in the lives of these young teens, at age 18, most cases, 17, 18, 19, whatever they might be. And, they have worked hard to get to this point, and
Absolutely.
and what I admire about you and your staff and your team was that you're very student focused, and you weren't going to deny them that opportunity. So it was worth the risk. And granted, people did or didn't, they were there. The students were recognized. And the other thing that I really, and I don't know, I can't remember if our last show you had already done this or you were just talking about doing it, but I did get on the green. The effort that you led to have every student recognized on these lawn signs.
Yep. I saw that. It was impressive.
And I know that we had the technical high school, we had Westfield High School, and St. Mary's.
We did.
And you got
Matt
them
Collins was out
involved.
there with us sticking signs
was
in the ground.
awesome.
Susan was out there helping, putting signs together.
I went down that day or the next day, and it was so. I was taking photographs. I did a Facebook post on it, but it was so impressive.
Yeah, it was.
It was incredible everywhere you went, and to see all the colors and the organization. And what was really cool is I watched through the week where parents, grandparents, whoever, coming down with those teens and having their pictures taken
with the sign.
next
Yeah.
to the sign. And then when this was all done and over with, they were all coming and picking up
Yep, they were
their
able to
sign,
take their sign.
and they were leaving with their sign. I just thought that was the coolest thing, and I give you high marks for that, and Susan and everybody else that was involved with that.
We thought it was pretty powerful,
It
and we
was
figured
awesome.
everybody drives by the green at
It
some
was
point
awesome.
over a week. You're
Right.
driving by there once, so we did get a lot of compliments for that. But my intent in putting that together was, this is such an unusual year for our seniors. Let's find a different way to recognize them.
Right.
And it was there during graduation, what would have been their senior week. So that was our intent.
How did you have all the photographs? Because
We
they
did.
all had their face shots on there. I mean, I was thinking about just that for printers, going to a print shop and saying, hey, we want hundreds and hundreds of these signs, and each one's got to be different. It's not like
Yeah.
you make one sign and I need 200 of the same thing, like a campaign sign. They had to be one of
Individual. And we sent yearbook photos that we had on file.
Oh, is that what it was?
And I want to just thank Mike at the sign shop here in Westfield. I always try to go local. You need to know that.
Yeah,
I think that's
absolutely.
important.
Right.
And they did a great job for us. They really did. And I think there was only one mistake
Okay.
out of almost 500 signs that were made.
Is that how many were
Yeah,
out there?
that's not bad. One
That-
mistake.
Yeah,
And
I'll take
Brian was spelt brain,
Oh, okay.
and we fixed it.
Right.
So, but
Right.
that's not bad for,
Right.
for that many students.
Yeah, no, but well done. And again, I just want to commend you, Susan, the principals, all your other key staff that really keeping the students focused and centered and saying, you know what, we're proud of you. We're going to send you off to your adult years feeling good about the experience you had, even though this wasn't how we wanted you to end your senior
Right.
year.
Yeah.
You can still at least feel appreciated.
Hopefully they'll hang on to
loved,
the signs.
feel respected. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, you do. I could tell you that I have all the signs from the Westfield 350. I got a copy of them myself at my house.
Excellent.
So let's move fast forward here. As I mentioned on Monday, this past Monday, August 10th, the school committee met a 4-hour meeting to approve the start of the new year based on the recommendations from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but mostly also input from our Westfield Director of Public Health, Joe Rouse, who was in front of them and really had a large influence on where that plan was going. And I know I think you were going in with one direction, and you kind of end up going another direction based on what the committee voted on. So let's just talk about, you were there.
Sure was. Susan
Oh,
was
yeah.
too.
Yep.
It's a 4-hour marathon.
I was there for every minute of it as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
And actually, it was interesting because there was very thoughtful. Nobody was really grumpy. There was just very thoughtful debate back and forth through the whole meeting.
And can we tell how many people were listening? We don't really have that information of how many people were just tuning into Channel 15, but I've been amazed at the number of people that said, I was there for the whole meeting.
I believe that.
And, the community is just together in this and trying to make sense of it. So I wish we could know, is there a way
Did
to
we
know?
crack the Nielsen ratings, Pete?
How many people watched it in real time?
Yeah.
Not sure, but I'm checking on the analytics.
How many
for the
have gone
video.
back to watch
It's
it?
Vimeo, yeah. I'm looking at that right now. You guys talk for a second.
Well, what
Well,
I'll
loads up.
say about that is Channel 15 rocks.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I give kudos to, it's a good time because Pete he's always the man behind the scene here in his little control room, so you don't really get a chance to see him. But he's the man that really lets this whole thing happen. And we've been
Agreed.
so
So-
excited to have community. Hang on one second, Pete. I
Yep.
got to give you some kudos here. But Pete is the person that's really brought Channel 15 to life here, and what a resource we have in our community now. And you look at the plethora of different kinds of shows and topics that we cover from the senior center and everything that's going on there, the schools, local politics, nonprofits. It's just amazing. But it's been really exciting to have this as an outlet for people to watch and know that they can go to Channel 15.
Certainly.
Directly
Or
from
online,
cable.
right?
Or online.
WSFD-TV.org, Pete?
West-
Yeah, a lot of people watching on their
westfieldtv.org.
phones.
Yep. you
So
can-
255 views since I posted it, and most people watched it. Over 50% watched it all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
And then there was those people watching it live, and we've had no shortage of media coverage either. By the way,
No,
I know.
you've had some great coverage in the Westfield News.
Absolutely.
Which I've got a couple of copies of here. That's been my reference point to.
and in the last 2 weeks, I've been on Western Mass News 3 times, WWLP twice.
Wow,
Yeah,
fantastic.
not less than 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm I'm not a local celebrity. But,
No, you're a local celebrity. But let's talk about that meeting and what was discussed and what was the final vote and where are we and what can we look forward
So
to.
we started by presenting our plan, and we were supposed to have that meeting the week before, and I don't know, Susan, did you end up losing power too at your house?
Stayed here. I stayed in the office to do the meeting in case I did. Granville was not heavily affected, no.
Yeah, I expected a tropical storm with some wind and some rain, but we didn't realize. Myself and every school committee person lost power that night.
They lost power here because
Wow.
Kenny was here
Yeah,
to
they
do
lost
the meeting.
power here as well.
Yeah.
Westfield was hard hit.
Yeah, I live
Yes.
up near Wyben, and we
Did
lost
you lose power? Yeah.
Right.
So in Montgomery, I lost power. I can tell you that. And then, like Susan, I was trying to get over to here. I'm like, well, maybe I can come to the office to run the meeting. and I went to take a left out of my driveway, and they had the road blocked because there was a tree down. And I went to take a right out of my driveway because there's a back way I can come, and there was a tree down and a fire and power lines down. So I was just like, okay, I can't go anywhere, and without at my house without power, I don't have very much internet. I have no internet at all,
Right,
so we
right.
couldn't do it. And then, so I know did have someone say, well, you could have given us a little more notice, and my answer was, I would have loved to, but I couldn't access a darn thing. I couldn't send anything out. So I know, Pete, you came in and you had it scrolling across the screen, or you did something from where you were.
I was
You
in
made that
Yarmouth
work.
and I was doing scroll across the screen because Kenny said I don't have power here.
Yeah, we couldn't do it.
I was going to try to do it from my hotel room.
Oh my God!
I
Listen.
know.
Because I had the laptop down there.
There's our producer, and on the Cape, and he's still running the show.
Dedication, we love it.
Right.
So
Well, and there was a city council meeting right after you guys that night.
that got canceled too, right?
And yeah, Brent was originally going to do it, and then he called me back and said, "Yeah, we got to cancel. Nobody can actually physically do
Can't
the
get
meeting."
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was difficult. But, so we presented our plan finally on Monday. And originally our plan was due Monday, but the commissioner gave us till this Friday, which is great because we're able to make the tweaks that are necessary before we submit tomorrow. But essentially, I think we coined the phrase, really, a phase-in approach, because other districts were talking about either going hybrid. I mean, and that was our charge. They were going to go hybrid right away. But we kind of felt like rather than bring everybody back hybrid on the first day of school, because that would be overwhelming, that we would be phasing students in. And our plan was in phase 1, it would be the CTE shop students, our high needs students, and our McKinney-Vento homeless students. And anyone else am I forgetting, Susan, in our original phases?
Preschool is in the original
Right.
list, but
And
now it's
spread out. So, and then our second phase was going to be students that are in transition grades, or what we consider transition grades, which is grade 1, and then students going into new schools. So students in grade 5 at the intermediate school, grade 7 at the middle, and grade 9 at the high school. But we did again, and then phase 3 was going to be everybody else hybrid, and then phase 4 would be returning to school normally because of the fact that we either have a treatment or a vaccine. And, that's probably obviously the furthest out. But so when now Joe Rouse has been working with us really since the beginning of this, and he's been on we have a back to school safety subcommittee. So we've been getting his input and advice. So Chris Rogers and I, who's my usual co-host here for Zap and Chris, but on Superintendent Spotlight, we met with Joe that morning, and he said, as I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at the trends, I think you might want to slow down a little bit. And so we invited him to the school committee meeting that night to explain his perspective. And really, I mean, I can't thank Joe enough for his expertise and what it is. It's beyond none of us, Susan. I mean, we don't have MD or anything or BN or anything after our names, and I think that we have to rely on the health experts because I'm not one. Right. And so what ended up happening is the school committee voted to start phase 1. So they took phase 1 and they broke it down into A, B, and C. So phase 1A are the shop students returning here. And I just want to emphasize again why we think that's important. I think it's very difficult to learn a trade through video or through remote learning.
Yep.
In fact, nearly impossible.
Yep.
And just for example, if you are in electrical wiring and you're watching a video how to wire a house, or you're actually wiring a house, I think that's two very different experiences. And
Right.
And I would prefer to have the person who actually wired a house wire my house than the one who watched it on YouTube. So because I can watch it on YouTube too, but it doesn't make me an electrician. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not a good
Right.
thing. And even in the auto shop, I mean, you have to touch the tools. You have to, you know what I mean? Or if you're in carpentry, I remember the first time I used a saw when I was in middle school and in shop, and it kicks back a little bit. Like you've got to feel the machinery, and you've got to know how to use it. So most of our shops are essentially large enough, if not all of them. They have multiple classrooms, and even this shop, Pete, you got this room, you got that room, you've got a huge space across the hall. They'll be able to do the 6 feet distancing, and also all of our shops have to adhere to OSHA requirements already, on top of everything else. So,
Joe actually said during the meeting, he said this again at the Board of Health.
Yeah.
He said he would treat these shops and regulating them like a business,
like a workplace.
He'd basically say, you're an auto shop. This is a graphic arts business, a printing business, and he was going to treat all the shops like he would a regular business in town.
And that's why we were able to move forward with. But that's phase 1A now. So phase 1B will be bringing back the high need students. Correct me if I'm wrong, Susan. I think I got this down by now. But and then phase 1C will bring back our preschool students and our kindergarten students. But our preschool students will come every day. That's our hope. And our kindergarten students will be every other week. Did I miss anything there, Susan?
No, that sounds right. And high needs is defined as students who have disabilities that require them to have special education services and the related services that go with that, like speech and OT, for up to 75% of their day. So it is not all students who have a disability or are on an IEP or 504. It is only those students that disability requires them to be in a substantially separate program for a large part of their day. So those parents have been called and told that their child is in this high needs identified group and that they can have their child return to school in this phase for every day. And then the other high needs group is the English learners. And those would be the English learners who are in a level 1 or level 2 status, which is a result or is derived from their score on the access test. So again, these parents are being called, given this option, because some of these parents are not choosing to send their students at this time. So all of that is being worked out.
Susan, are the high needs in the preschool kindergarten, are they coming back at the same time that the technical academy is starting, or are they starting later?
No, the school committee voted for the technical academy phase 1A. They will start school on the official start date, September 14th.
Okay.
All other students except K and pre-K always start a week later for early assessments that are done first. But all other students will begin remote, grades 1 through 12, on that September 14th. And then the school committee will vote on when the next phase of students, which would be the high needs group, and then that kindergarten and preschool. But depending on how things go, they may vote to bring both 1A and 1B, phase 1B and 1C back at the same time. We had originally had everyone at the same time, and then it was broken apart to slow down. So, that could change and we could combine those again to come back.
So at this point, then, the only official start date in person is the Tech Academy.
Right. The rest will be starting remotely on September 14th, with the exception of pre-K and K, who will start the week after. So as Susan mentioned, the assessments, I mean, right now we're hoping to be able to do like kindergarten screenings the week of September 14th, and then the students would return remotely on the 21st. And, I know, so I had put the kindergartens in early in phase 1 because I think for a lot of them it's their first time in formal schooling, and I know that they have to meet their teachers, and I think you have to build that relationship in order for remote learning to even occur. But after listening to Joe Rouse speak and just asking us to slow down, made complete sense to me. And I think given the information that we received from Joe, I think that the school committee made the best decision that they could just to slow us down. So, other districts are starting completely remote, and I think like Springfield, the first 45 days, Holyoke, and other places. Others are now using our phased-in terminology and saying that they're going to be phasing in as we have. So I think one of your questions was on here, how influenced were we by the other districts?
Yeah.
And I'd like to reverse that question and say, how influenced were the other districts by us?
Actually, I like that. That's good. That's good.
I mean, there are differences because a lot of those districts are going back Mondays and Tuesdays with one group, Wednesday off, and then Thursdays and Fridays. And they're saying that Wednesday piece will be a day for deep cleaning. But we've worked out with our custodians and our maintenance crew, who are phenomenal, by the way, that they're going to deep clean our schools after the kids leave every day. So
wow,
and that's great because if over a 2-week span, our model has kids in school 5 days instead of 4, what some of the other districts are doing. The other thing is the week we thought, and was supported by some survey results that we put out because we put out plenty of surveys. Just the 1 week, it's a little bit better for students, particularly the younger students, to establish routines. That we thought like after 2 days, and the kids would get used to the routines, and then they're going home for 3, and then you got to it's like Groundhog Day every Monday on that point.
Right.
So we also thought it might be easier for childcare, for people to have, they know 1 week the student will be in school and 1 week they won't. But we have some thoughts on that too. I know I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, no, there's no question that everyone's looking at everyone. I'm sure you've been looking at what the other systems or districts are doing, and I'm sure they're looking at us. And no one's been through this before.
No.
You're trying to do, it's kind of what we were talking about off the air. You do the best you can in the situation you're in with the information and the resources that you have at hand at that point in time.
Right.
That's all you can do is do the best you can. And there's no model. No one's ever written a book. No one ever expected to have a devastating virus come in and take down an entire nation, entire world, quite frankly.
Harry, I had hoped by August at this thing that we could say that we don't have to even talk about this anymore, but it's not the case. And
No.
we're starting to see an uptick in Massachusetts, and I feel as though, just to be blunt, that the governor is a contradiction in terms of schools should open, but I'm lowering the amount of people that can be in a crowd inside.
You're right.
I mean, I understand that, but I wish he hadn't done that. It kind of puts it puts superintendents in a spot.
Right.
It's okay for kids, but not for everybody else. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, some of the upticks are for various reasons. And Joe brought that up at the meeting too. And people going on vacations.
Right.
To areas that are hotspots, and then coming back and not saying anything about it.
Right.
And I think this is vacation season still, so buying us a little time in September is okay in my opinion, because we can gauge things as people return back, and hopefully there will not be an uptick. I mean, we'd like to be able to. Massachusetts is in good shape, but the numbers are creeping up a little bit.
Right. Let's talk for a moment. We now know that September 14th is the start date. Typically, it would have been, August 26th or
August
something?
31st would have been the first day for students.
Students, okay.
So our new teachers start August 25th, and that's kind of an orientation day. And our all other staff is returning August 26th. That is still happening, and we have 12 days now where we can work with staff to prepare them. And I'm going to let Susan talk about that a little bit, because I know you're working on the plan. And some people said, so the commissioner, just for the little background story, agreed to give districts 10 extra days for training, and that includes obviously how to do remote learning better, but also sanitation and cleaning techniques, and and allowing districts to plan. I mean, we have to, and I know we're going to talk about that after, but like, what if a student is thought to possibly have COVID or a staff member? But Susan, you want to talk a little bit about the days beforehand?
Sure. So our remote learning plan for this year, which all students will be accessing, includes a lot of components that we know from talking to our parents in focus groups, talking with our teachers, our administrators, and then all of our survey results. We got some great data about what worked well and what didn't work as well. So we have developed a plan, the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee and the Executive Board making the whole back to school plan, that involves a structured, rigorous, and consistent platform. We will all be using Google platform pre-K to 12. We won't be using Zoom. We will be using Google Meet for all of our synchronous live and that's the real-time learning, because Google Meet is compatible with Chrome. And Stefan will tell you about our Chromebooks and the situation there and equipping our students. But to talk about the professional development right now, it is very much focused on all of the tools that we have identified. And we talked about the spring with some different analogies, but we acknowledged that we were in a crisis mode. We had not planned for the closure. So it was like we were on the Titanic and people were grabbing it for deck chairs to use because we didn't have, enough lifeboats. So now we have a plan that is going to have everything we need for, for students and staff, from the connectivity issue, the device issue, through the training for staff and for families. So we have these 10 days added to our 2 days, and we're structuring a plan that is going to include site-based time at first. We call it site-based. So all the teachers, all the paraprofessionals, support staff will be meeting with their own schools for the first several days. And the safety training will be part of that, acclimating to the new environment. What is it going to look like now? How will students move through the building with their teachers? All of that is new for all of us. And then we'll shift into a week and a little more of district days, district professional development that everyone can access, and that is able to be differentiated. We will have Google training, Google Meet training, and people are more familiar with it or less familiar with it. They'll be able to select within options, Google Classroom as well. And then we have a whole variety of other trainings in those 5 to 7 days that have to do with the tools we've selected that are the most compatible tools to use for video recording, for tests and quizzes, formative assessments with students. So that is going to be provided by an outside company that we have contracted with that has expertise in all of these. They have an expert for each of these different programs and tools. So staff will be taking that training remotely because they are not in the state, and so they can't bring. And we can have up to 100 people in a session that way. So we're really able to do a lot. And part of our contract with them is to extend through the year, where they will be coming back on a monthly or bi-monthly basis to just provide support that teachers will know. I can come back and ask my questions, get some support with some area that I am struggling with. We know that's more effective professional development. So those district days with the technology are also being combined with some other required trainings, culturally responsive practices being one of them. What has happened while the closure has occurred with the racial tensions and everything that has transpired made us realize that we want to provide as much support to our teachers about how to have those conversations with students and how to support students in their understanding. Another required training will be trauma-informed practices. Many of our students have already experienced trauma or have experienced some significant trauma as a result of COVID-19 and the school closures. So just having some updated training for our teachers about the best instructional practices that we can use to support our students that are going through these things. And then the final days of these 12, we have set aside as collaborative days. We are not having the teachers signed up and moving through additional training. We're giving them the time to assimilate what they've learned, practice some of these new things, set up their Google Classroom, and to collaborate with other educators to do it. We've had so many requests from teachers to meet as grade level teams across the district and learn from each other what worked, how can we share resources. We've always known collaboration is important in education, but this situation has magnified it. Everybody from the parents to the teachers to the students has given us feedback that when they're able to collaborate with colleagues, the result is better for everyone involved. So we want to facilitate that to happen.
Well, and what I will add to that too is we, you know, in terms of remote learning in the fall, in the spring, we had, you know, again, it was all brand new to everybody. And so obviously there were some better practices than others, and through no one's fault. It was just, it's a matter of what you knew and what you didn't know. But what I like is in one of our surveys too, saw teachers that had really good success with different things that they did have volunteered to share that expertise with other staff. So, and that will happen during that collaboration
During
time.
those days, here's my sticky note on my desk, call for proposals. I need to send out to all of our teachers, and it's the process that we use because we have such expertise in our district and they can share that with colleagues. We send out the call for proposals, and it's going to be very narrowly focused this time on remote learning, pedagogical strategies, and tools that for teachers' use. So those experts that we have out there that were killing it are going to be able to submit a proposal to run one of these trainings during the last 2 days of the district days, the 8th and 9th.
You know, I was talking to a mother in another district within the Pioneer Valley, but wasn't here in Westfield. And she was, we were just talking about the whole state of education, and she was wooing the fact that she was going to have to be a teacher again. You know, she was hoping that her children are going to be back in school. And she said to me, she said, you know, Harry, she says, I just hope they're more organized than they were. And again, this is another district.
Sure.
And I said to her, I said, you know, I said, when this hit, nobody knew what to do.
Right.
It was like all of a sudden this explosion happened, and now you're kind of like running for your life and trying to figure out the best thing that you can do to move forward. And I said they have learned a lot.
Absolutely.
Since those couple of months in the spring, and I said they've had their entire summer to readjust, to plan, to make the final assessments. I said, I think that you'll find that when you go back, it's going to be an entirely different feeling and approach than what you experienced in the spring. And I'm sure, as I'm listening to you, Susan, and I would expect nothing less from this great district that we're part of here in Westfield, for that to be the case, that you learned a lot. You did the best you could. You learned a lot, but you've had the whole summer, and as you stated, you're exhausted. All of you have to be exhausted because you're like starting all over. It's not like a cookie cutter. Well, okay, we've got this and we'll just kind of fine tune it. It's a whole new plan that no one has ever experimented with, tried before, and again, giving it your best approach with all the best information you have at this point in time.
And I want to clarify, the work on remote learning is still happening because, and I believe I mentioned this in our last show, but when we completed our feasibility studies, we don't have the spaces in our buildings to bring back every student at one time and keep the 6 feet social distancing or physical distancing requirements. So we know we can only do about half in each building. And so 1 week students, you know, will be in class, and the next week they'll be remote. So, and then, and that's our model moving forward until we can bring everybody back.
Right.
And we're going to phase into that as well. And
right.
So everybody, like I said, except for the Tech Academy shops, will be starting remotely.
You know, Susan, I have a copy of yesterday's Westfield News from August 12th. And there were 2 quotes that they attributed you to, which I thought were great. I circled them because I thought they were excellent. We know that remote learning needs to be structured, rigorous, and consistent. You just mentioned that earlier. And I've heard you say that before on the other shows that you've been on with me. And the other quote that you put in is that we will follow a regular school day, attendance will be taken, assessments will be made, and assignments will be graded. That's as close to being in person in a classroom as you can get.
Well, if you remember last spring from the commissioner now of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we were kind of pass fail or credit no
I
credit.
wanted to ask you about that.
And that was because, that came to us from the state, and we really had to go that route. But the reason it was at the time, again, is because the newness of it, and I think there was a question: is how can we assess our students at that point,
Right.
in a model we've never tried before? But I think grades and attendance now, right, Susan? I mean, they can happen. I think it's also going to increase student motivation to
Right.
do the work. And I think the way that Susan describes how remote learning is going to be different, Susan, with the class periods, why don't you talk about that for a
Right.
second? Explain that.
So we know that there are two balances that we need to achieve. We need to achieve a balance between synchronous learning and asynchronous learning, which the synchronous is that which happens in real time. So it's a teacher working with the students, instructing the students, building relationships, all of that can happen in person would be happening video conference wise live. And then the asynchronous is everything else that a student is going to do, which could include assignments the teacher is giving, written assignments. It could include the teacher asking the student to watch some videos about something either the teacher has recorded or found and posted in the classroom. Or it could be the teacher asking the student to spend some time on some web-based programs that we use, like iReady is one of those where students practice their skills in reading and math using that program. So that's one balance, synchronous and asynchronous. The other balance is screen time, online and offline. We don't want kids on screens for 6 hours. So we are making an expectation that synchronous learning, those live sessions, will be 50% of the time of the class period. So if the class period at the intermediate school, let's use that as an example, 6th grade math, the teacher will be live with the students. Maybe there will be a whole group lesson with a demonstration of how to solve a problem. And then maybe the teacher's working with some small groups of students online while other students are now offline and working through problems or independent work. So the time frame of it, a math block at the intermediate school is 80 minutes. So the teacher might be with students for 20 minutes, the whole group, and then the teacher might spend 10 minutes with 2 or 3 different groups of students or do a little one-on-one time. But that allows the other students to have that break from the screen in between and before their next class. And Harry, I thought maybe you were going to reference the quote, "It's going to be great," which my colleagues in other districts and people have texted me about. And I think I'm a pretty glass half full person. I think probably that quote was related, or when I said that, I was probably talking about the professional development, the great plan we organized. But I do think it is going to work so well comparatively.
No,
to
I
what we've
read it. I read
experienced.
into that quote. I got you on that. Right. So
But we know nothing can replace in-person instruction.
Absolutely.
We know that,
So-
and we want to get there.
one of the things I'm excited to hear, though, is the fact that there's going to be real grading going on. Because I think that in the credit, no credit, it was like, well, how
Some
much
will
effort
just do the bare minimum.
Right.
Some
How
yeah,
much
some
do-
students here, the seniors,
Right.
figured out that they had enough to pass for the year, and they
Yeah.
they kind of checked out.
But you know what this does is this puts the motivation back on them, and it puts the pressure back on them to perform at the best that they can. And it, quite frankly, even though they're not directly in the classroom, it gets them as close to being in the classroom as possible. This is back to normal.
Superintendent, do you think that the state learned a little bit from the private schools that stayed on their schedule, even though it was a Zoom type of thing? I know like St. Mary's and other private institutions stayed on their regular course schedule and they just, you had to be there, otherwise you weren't going to pass the class. Do you think the state learned from that?
I do think they learned from that. But, Pete, one of the things that we struggled with as a public school in comparison to private schools, and it's just there's an economic piece to that. The private schools had the luxury, if you want to call it that, of being able to continue that because the vast majority, if not all of their students, had internet access and had Chromebooks or
Devices.
some sort of device. So we are a public school. So we have every student of all across the economic spectrum. And we knew last year that we had somewhere between 50 and 100, right, Susan, that did not have either
at least 100.
at least 100 that didn't have internet access or any kind of a device. And so while we tried to distribute that, we struggled with trying to get internet access for those families. Now we have a solution for that for this year, of course.
Right, but I
last
mean, that
year wasn't.
now gave you the time to catch up. You know, this summer
Yeah.
kind of gave you some breathing room.
Absolutely.
Well, and there's, I'm not going to lie here, there's some grant money that helped us purchase some things. And so, this year, so one of the most exciting things I think I can talk about is, and Susan referenced it before, is just our advances in technology over this summer. So, first, we purchased something called Kajit, which is a internet. So if Harry Rock, the student, indicates to us in our survey, which I just put out last night, that you need both internet and a device, we can provide you with both of those. So now you can do your learning at home. Now, we tried to work out some sort of arrangements last year with either the G&E or in Comcast, and with limited success, but because we still had students that were not able to access the work online, and they did work and they did packet work, which in some cases is busy work, right? While we were trying to cover the standards. But this year, completely different. We will be able to provide a device and internet access to any family that needs it. And I'm pretty excited, too, because we just got an order of 800 Chromebooks that came in. So we had 4,200 Chromebooks in the district. We got another order for 800 that just came in. We have 1,000 more coming. So
It's close to 1-to-1, isn't it?
it is 1-to-1. It's a little bit over 1-to-1. So
that is amazing.
as a positive side effect, and this is me, that whole cup reference, Susan, that you made before, right? As a positive here, Westfield Public Schools is going to be a 1-to-1 device district, where last year we were only able to do that for the middle school and the intermediate school. Now we're going to be able to do it district wide.
Remember when that was just pie in the sky?
Yeah, but and again, it's some of the grant money that we've received is allowing us to do that. But so when we do come back to school, that's going to be huge, right? It's going to be great. It's good now, but it's also great for
Parents are asking about that, and so we want to let people know that yes, everyone eventually, some of these Chromebooks are on back order,
right?
But as Stefan said, more are coming, and within the first few weeks of school, we expect to have all those. But we will be scheduling a pickup. It will be from the school sites. The principals will be putting that information out. Those dates have not been set yet.
They haven't.
I just want people to know that is coming, and we will get the information out in the same way that we've been communicating all of this information along the way.
And while you're saying that, I always want to emphasize, people, if you're on Facebook, Westfield MA Public Schools, there's a boatload of information on there all the time. About things that are happening, and if you're not, make sure you find a way to sign up for our district email. And so last night I sent out an enrollment verification form for parents. Okay. And that is, at that point, students are going to choose from option 1, which is our hybrid model, which we're phasing into, or option 2, which is complete remote learning for the year. And we have we have families that aren't comfortable sending their students to school, even with the precautions we're putting in place, and that's okay. They will be fully remote for the whole year. The other thing we're asking families on that survey is if they need a device or internet access. We're also asking them about transportation needs, and that's a whole nother story because transportation, we know now from the guidance that we've received, and this comes from both the DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and the Massachusetts Department of Health, that we can only fill our buses at about 1/3 capacity, which is one student per seat. And they have to be so if you're on the inside by the window, the next seat you're sitting on the outside, and it's rotated like that. We did experience a little bit of relief in that siblings can sit together in the same seat because they're in the same household every day. But with only being able to transport 1/3 of our students, that creates an obstacle as well. And we're building our cohorts A and our cohorts B for when we get to the rotating weeks. And we are, transportation is driving that bus, I have to be honest, because, we're trying to figure out a way to get those students to and from school. And we've also encouraged and asked families, if you have your own transportation, it would really help us out if you have a way to get your child to and from school, because we only have so many buses. And it's not like we can go out and buy a bus, because those are actually on back order for about a year. So, and it's also the drivers. I mean, It's not like we have a ton of bus drivers in reserve. So we're going to do the best we can with transportation, but I also want to let people know that when we are doing the cohorts, we are prioritizing having siblings going together the same week. So, in terms of that child care question that keeps coming up, and, I've had several parents email me and saying, okay, I have a high school student and a second grader. And so my answer to them was, well, we're going to make sure that they're going to school on the same week. So in theory, if you're comfortable with that, your high school student could watch the younger sibling and help, and they could work on the remote learning either together or so on. I'm not saying it's the ideal situation, but at least we're trying to think ahead for those kinds of things.
Right.
And people might think, well, you're making two groups, just do A through L and M through Z. But it's much more complicated than that, partially because of the busing that Stefan's talking about. So we're doing this by bus stop, because otherwise we would have buses zigzagging up and down
town,
streets all over the city in a very inefficient way.
Right.
So we are cohorting by bus stop, but then connecting the siblings, as Stefan mentioned, and we have to start with WTA, because freshmen and seniors
are
go
starting
the same week, and juniors and sophomores go the same week. So it's like the biggest Sudoku puzzle I've ever worked on. It's
and you and Pam are
exciting.
doing terrific work. Thank you, Susan, for that.
And it's going to be great.
It is.
I
There we
can
go.
Guarantee it.
I'll tell you, I'm getting dizzy just thinking about it. But we do have to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to continue to talk about what's happening with the reopening of Westfield schools. It is Wednesday, August 13th, and you are listening to a special combined edition of Rock On Westfield. And the Superintendent Spotlight in the studio with me is Westfield Superintendent Stefan Zaporowski, and on Zoom is Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Susan Dargy. I am Harry Rock, and we will be right back. Pete, we're going to go with a short break. We'll forego the song and then come back because we have a lot of information.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley, with convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut. Visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3600. 3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Underwriting is brought to you by Boise Cascade Distribution, providing products and services needed for building material dealers, home improvement centers, and industrial customers. They offer everything from engineered wood and plywood to Drex decking and railing, James Hardy siding, and Advantech subfloor. Located at 33 Fowler Street Extension in Westfield and on the web at bc.com, they are committed to providing quality products, great service, convenience, and value.
I'm Mark Auerbach. Join me every Friday at 8 a.m. for Arts Beat, where you'll meet interesting actors, directors, designers, and musicians here in Western New England.
Community Radio 89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And welcome back, listeners. You are listening to a special combined edition of Rock on Westfield and Superintendent Spotlight with Stefan Zaporowski, our Westfield Superintendent, and on Zoom is Director of Curriculum Instruction, Susan Dargy, and I am Harry Rock. You are listening to Westfield Community Programming Cable Channel 15 and WSKB 89.5. Having a fascinating conversation.
By the way, I know, Harry, people are listening because apparently we lost audio for about 5 minutes on Channel 15.
Oh, no.
And I got 3 emails, and I did a reboot of one of my devices, and then they were like, oh, it came back.
Oh, good.
So people are out there watching right now.
Oh, good.
And they're actively emailing me saying, do you know you lost audio? And I'm like, no, but thanks for telling me.
Oh, my gosh. Oh,
So if you lose audio on Channel 15, are we still on the radio, though?
Oh, yeah.
And westfieldtv.org?
Yes, yeah, because
Okay.
they're all independent.
Okay.
So I just rebooted one device.
I was just
and
curious.
and it got me the audio back
Did you
for
know the
Channel
answer
15.
to that, Harry?
I did not know the answer to that, so that's why I leave the technical stuff to our
Pete.
great producer, Pete Coles, because he's the man that keeps us going. But, you know, I'm glad that people are listening because this is such a complex topic and such an important topic when it relates to the education of our students and bringing our students back to the classroom and back to their education in a safe, orderly, well thought out, well-organized manner. And I have to commend you as I've been listening to this. There's no question, Susan, you and your team, all the other department chairs and heads that you have, the school committee, principals, teachers, everybody's just doing their part to really make sure that we're going to get
And
our
it's been no
students back.
small effort. I
No,
need to put that
this
out
is,
there.
This is huge, absolutely huge. And like I said, I think that parents, and then I'll just do this quick lead in, but I think parents can expect an entirely different experience than what they saw in the spring.
Definitely.
Because you've learned from that. It was, I hate to use that term, seat of your pants, because it was as well done as you could do it. But, it was
unknown territory.
It was an emergency situation. There was no chance to plan. You just had to do the best you could, and with input that was coming in from the state at the time. But you've learned a lot from that, and you've had the whole summer to really prepare. And as I listened to Susan, there's no question that you and your team have really put a lot of work. I'm hearing new terms. I've had you on a couple of times now. So synchronous and asynchronous, I've got those terms down in my vocabulary now from you, but you threw a couple of new ones out there that I hadn't heard before, and I said, yep, they're doing their work. I've heard already that no more Zoom, we're going to Google Meet.
Well, and I want to comment on that because when this first started in March, these things were free. But nothing is free forever, Harry.
Oh.
That's right. I mean, that's the world we live in. And and we as a district have embraced the Google platform Chromebook since I became superintendent. Right. So we have to stay with Google. And we know that Zoom doesn't always work well with Chromebooks. So that's one reason. Two, Zoom is charging. So if you haven't bought stock anywhere, Pete, Zoom might be the place to go. But because all of these free services are now, right, Susan? They're starting to charge. They used to be free, and now they're charging.
Tools as well.
Yeah.
So we've had to select. We had teachers using Loom to record videos, Screencastify, Screenomatic, and everything was free. All the bells and whistles, and now they're not free. So we had to find the one that was the best and buy that one.
Right.
and then train everybody to use
Demand offers the opportunity to charge.
It
There's no
absolutely does.
Actually,
Yeah.
my budget is paying for. I decided I would pay for the Zoom accounts for the city, so we could keep doing all the meetings.
Right.
Because
Wow.
the same thing happened with the city account. That went. You'd be limited to 40 minutes, and I don't know any city council meeting that
Right.
goes under 40
Pete,
minutes.
Pete, that's not a bad idea if you kept Zoom for 40 minutes. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, oh no.
I want to go back to the Chromebooks because I think it's significant. As I've been listening, it sounds like there was this dream a couple of years ago of, we need to get to the point where it's 1-to-1 in every child.
And we were slowly getting there.
And slowly getting there. And now it sounds like you're going to absolutely do it. The other thing that I was reading in the Westfield News article from yesterday is the fact that if parents don't have internet access, you're going to pay to allow them to sign up, and you will pay their...
Right. That's the Khajiit piece that I was talking about earlier.
What is that term again? I heard
Khajiit. It is Susan, what is Khajiit?
Khajiit is the company
Right.
that we purchased the hotspot devices for. This was new for me because I thought you could only get a hotspot on your phone and pay through your cell phone carrier. But I learned that these devices, you purchase the device and it looks like a modem, like we would have at our house. And it is a subscription service like a cell phone. So we purchased the devices, 50 devices, and we may need to purchase more. That's where we started with the survey Stefan sent out last night should help get us more information on that. And then through our teachers and principals, we can get more info. But it's a monthly charge, like a cell phone. And so we are absorbing that annual cost. So we're giving the device to the family to put in their home, and then we're maintaining it over the course of the year.
That's really significant. So there's no excuse for anyone in Westfield not to feel that they're going to get an adequate and proper...
And that's our hope. It's an equity thing, and
Right.
if you don't have access to internet, then
Right.
clearly you're not going
Right.
to get the same benefit out of our remote learning plan. I mean,
Right.
that goes without saying.
It's so funny because in today's socially dominated world, with the internet, it's hard to believe that there are families and people that don't have internet. But obviously, in Westfield, as I'm sure other communities, that exists. And so the fact that you have recognized that and you have taken steps to eliminate that as a barrier to education, that's huge.
I think too that, and some people are like, why do I have to have that? 40% of the students in the Westfield Public Schools are considered economically disadvantaged.
How many?
40% of our students are considered economically disadvantaged. So, and that number has grown over my time as superintendent, and Susan, since you've been in the district.
Absolutely.
It doesn't
I'm sure
go
it's
down.
grown since March.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
go.
would guess.
Me too. We don't have updated stats. It was 40% then. And so to provide this for us was a no-brainer. I mean, it's what we have to do. It's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so last year, or not last year, but in the spring, families that didn't have the access were getting those paper materials that we delivered in backpacks with school supplies. It was the best solution at the time, but they were receiving no direct instruction from a teacher. So that is backpacks are not an option going forward. We will be providing materials to students to support the remote learning. For example, we are going to have a new math curriculum program and materials K-12. And at the K-6 level, there are math workbooks. So we are going to be having the same kind of distribution like with the Chromebooks to distribute materials like that. Handwriting Without Tears is a program that we use at the elementary level to teach manuscript and cursive writing. I want to point that out because
we
do teach cursive writing.
That's a misconception. They say schools don't teach cursive writing anymore. We still do in the Westfield Public Schools. So
good for you.
We do in grade 3 and
my wife Ann will be happy to hear that.
In grade 4, but then we shift. Now we have to teach keyboarding skills, right? So we teach the manuscript. We shift to the cursive, and then we move on to the focus on the keyboarding. But they will be getting math manipulatives, or if students need graph paper for some of the math they're going to be working on, those materials are going to be put together on teacher recommendations and then distribution to support. Now, once we're hybrid, that's not a worry for students because they're coming to school every other week. So the teacher can give them whatever materials they're going to need to work on during the remote week. And the teacher can also take time on Friday of that week to review the assignments that are being given for the next week. And Harry, earlier you mentioned parents having to provide a lot of support, and that parent you were talking to from another community. One of the things that we want our parents to know is that we are developing a plan that we hope is going to be able, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. So we're figuring all those numbers out, but we want to be able to provide support for our students, both when they're in school and when they are at home. And so that might mean teacher teams, the collaboration we talked about earlier. So it's a different mindset of maybe I don't just have one teacher. Maybe I have a teacher for when I'm in school, but there's another teacher who's checking in with me when I'm at home. And that will be good. And then I don't know if we've talked about the fact that we do have that fully remote option.
We haven't talked about it. So parents have that choice.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second.
Okay. So parents, so I sent out last night an enrollment verification form, put it on Facebook as well. Parents go in, they fill it out. They have a choice of option 1 or option 2, and option 1 being the hybrid, but option 2 is a full remote learning model, meaning those students will be at home pretty much for the school year and doing strictly remote learning, right, Susan? I mean, that's
right. And we could have opted for the state developed model, but that would not have given our students the same experience as our students that are in the hybrid model. So our remote model is going to be taught by Westfield public school teachers. They are going to follow the same Westfield curriculum that's based on the Massachusetts framework. So the students who opt for fully remote are going to have a separate experience in classroom. They will have a teacher that doesn't work with the students who come into school. So it's really almost a school within the district that's separate, or schools within a school.
And I want to point out, because I looked on the survey this morning, and there were about 500 responses the last time I looked, and I just sent it out last night.
Wow.
And we're hovering between 25 and 30% of families that are choosing full remote.
Wow.
And I think that just goes to show you that, you have those people that think this is a hoax and it was a plandemic, right, Pete? A plandemic. Have you heard that one yet?
Yeah, some people have said that,
Yeah, and that COVID isn't real and it's fake or everything else. But clearly about 30% of our families feel that it is real and they have legitimate fear. I talked to some of parents that have been calling me and asking, and I want to go completely remote. They've had COVID. And they said, I've never been sicker in my life. I thought I was dying, I think is what one person said to me.
Yep.
And that's not fake to me, Harry, when someone tells you that.
Right.
It's not fake. Is it as hyped up as the media wants you to believe? That's another discussion.
It's another discussion, but Pete, people
it's
are
real.
Getting sick and people are dying.
Oh, I believe, yeah. I know that people have died.
You can't argue that.
Yep.
Over 160,000 and it's climbing. So.
And our country, to be fair, is the worst in the world. And I think... if you look at any of the numbers, I'm telling you, I don't know if this is an accurate statement, but it feels like we have half the cases across the world when you look in that. And again, it's just difficult when you're thinking about bringing people back because, again, for the people who refuse to wear a mask or so on, if that's the environment at the home and these students are coming into our schools, what are they bringing into our schools? And so I have, my responsibility is ultimately the safety of our students, but also the safety of our staff. So I think that's where some people are getting, I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that our staff can be very vulnerable too. We certainly have elderly staff that are in a high risk position or may have their own illnesses or taking care of someone who has that. And you don't want to bring that home to a grandparent or a sick relative. So there's so many factors that sometimes I think I get frustrated when people are just either one way or the other. There's so much that we have to consider.
Right.
And if I'm taking my responsibility seriously, which you know that I do,
Yes.
I'm responsible for the safety of these folks. And the
Yeah.
first student that gets sick or the first staff member that gets sick, I'm going to be second guessing myself all the way through. And I got to be honest, I'm not going to feel very good about it.
Yeah,
The biggest
no.
problem we have is we've raised a me culture, and this is a time where we need to be a we culture, and we don't have that.
You're right. Well, the other thing too, Pete, and I'm just going to say it right now, we're Americans. We do whatever the hell we want.
That's what I'm saying, but that's what I mean.
It's true.
That's exactly what I mean. We've raised a me culture, and this is the time where we need to be a we culture.
I mean, we want this to go away.
Right.
Isn't that the ultimate goal? So
It
to
is.
me, we should be doing whatever it takes to get us there because, like I said, I can no longer embrace the suck. I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. This is because it is, people think, I will be honest, in the summertime, we usually have some downtime. It's when we take our vacations and so on. And
Right.
this summer hasn't been like that
No,
for
you
us.
haven't had time.
It has been busier almost, right, Susan, than a regular
Yeah. It
school
has
year
to
would
be.
be. And
Yeah.
Has to
and
be.
I just want to get
Especially
back.
right now. It feels like we're in the same kind of frenetic period that we were in on March 16th.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're just gearing up. But one of the things I want to make sure that the listeners know about that fully remote model, and so that we can encourage those numbers to grow on the survey beyond 500, is that you are able to change your mind. We are talking about how changeable this virus has been, or the information about the virus. We have to look at what's happening, and then in relation to our family, what decision do we want to make? So we are asking people to tell us now what you think your decision is now, because we need that information to plan for the busing and for the class groupings, because we're going to be making those class lists for the 25% that we think will be fully remote, and then our in-person group. If you do change, if you select hybrid and want to change to remote, that's probably a quicker transition. If you select remote and then at some point during the year decide, yes, you would like your students to come back in person in the hybrid model, there will probably need to be a transition period. We may ask for some support with transportation
Right.
until Pam can look at bus routes and make adjustments. So all the information is contingent on the other information. So we are providing as much information as we can to our parents and families at this point, and we're asking them to give us the information they have right now so that we can make our plan.
Fully knowing that we're still a month before school starts.
Right.
And this has been part of my gripe, I guess, with the state and saying, oh, your final plan is due on August 14th. And I look at that date as completely arbitrary because something could happen and by Monday we're going to have to
absolutely.
change the plan.
Right.
So, when people have asked, well, the plan is due, I'm like, so what? I mean, we're going to submit what we have at the time, fully realizing that we are committed to do what's best for the community of Westfield, and the students. And those that are getting caught up in some, what I consider an arbitrary timeline, it doesn't bother me. We're going to hand in what we have.
Yeah, you hand in what you have because you know that you're going to be tinkering with it and refining it right
up to the day school starts, and even when school's in session.
School's going, and so I think people need to understand that. And the problem, that's the disconnect between the state and what's happening at the ground
It's
level.
always the disconnect
yeah,
between the
those are
state.
Right. But anyway, I don't want to go there. Susan, I'm fascinated with and I didn't realize that on the full remote, I was thinking, because I've been reading about, the hybrid versus full remote, and I was thinking it's the same teacher. Now that teacher's got to work with those students fully as well as the students.
It would be double duty, so we
would
have
be
to
double
be.
duty.
Yeah,
So
we
they're
can't do
really-
that either.
So your analogy really is it's a school within a school is very interesting. So they're going to have their own separate teachers by grade level
Yes, and by course.
and by
So
course.
when we
Wow.
have teams,
Oh my gosh.
they're in theory, and we need the real numbers to see what it looks like, could be a remote team at Westfield Middle School. So all the students that are opting for the remote model would have this team of teachers that is instructing them. And so if parents are changing to the in-person, then they would get the team, a different team, because we do want to make it as seamless as possible. And having that kind of movement or asking teachers to do double duty, as Stefan said, isn't realistic. We need to support our staff and families in making this work.
And I want to add to that, because so we know that we're going to have a certain number of staff members that can't physically return to the building, again, because of their own personal condition or some exception that has been made. Now, in an ideal world, which we'll see how it works out, but we would love to have, so if 30% of our students choose full remote learning and 30% of our staff can't come back, that we could make that probably work in terms of but if it's not close, then it's going to be more of a struggle. But we also know that in a remote learning environment, a teacher teaching in a class will have probably around 10 to 12 kids in their classroom during 1 week, and then the next 10 to 12 the following week. In remote learning, you might have 24 kids at that point, because it's a different learning environment. So we have more to do, and we have more planning to do, and that's why it's really important that parents fill out that enrollment verification form. It's got to be done by August 21st, and because we have a deadline, if a parent does not fill that out, we have indicated we're going to automatically place you in the hybrid learning model rather than remote. So just because we have to put you somewhere, and if you really don't want to be in the hybrid model, make sure you indicate full remote on that survey.
And so for parents that need to get more information on the difference between those two, they can go to your website.
Yes.
And what do they look for on your website? Where do they?
So there's a back to school information. So on the top of the website, there's a drop down that says back to school information, and it has every single thing that's been talked about this since July, including my letters that have gone out, the DESE guidance, any media articles. It also includes the members of our back to school committees that we've been working with. And I want to stress that has not just been administration and top down. That has included parents and teachers on those committees, and you can see their names right out there. Our goal is to be as transparent as possible. We're not hiding anything here, and I
there
appreciate
will be more information there. On Stefan, you made the deadline August 21st. Is that correct?
Yes.
But on tomorrow, August 14th, our more detailed plan will be posted in that same place. And they can watch the school, if they want to listen to the school committee meeting, details were discussed there.
Right.
So parents that are looking for as much information as they can to make their decision can do those two things, but then they can tell us where they are right now.
Right. And what's important too is that, so folks, I just got another email. People are asking me for exact dates and when their kid's going to be going back to school. I don't have that. What I can share, and I did share on our Westfield Mass Public Schools Facebook page, going back and forth with some people, is that the school committee made the decision that they're going to vote the next phase in. So our next school committee meeting is August 24th, where I do not expect, because school hasn't started yet, unless there's some miracle vaccine between now and then, that we're going to change the plan that we have already started. But then after that, every August 24th, and then our next one is September 21st. And then every month, our school committee meetings are Monday nights on the first and third Monday of the month. So every 2 weeks, we'll be revisiting and deciding if it's appropriate to bring another phase in. And we're going to be relying on the expertise of the Public Health Department and Joe Rouse. And I want to thank Joe again, because he's now going to be a regular at our school committee meetings to provide updates. And, Joe knows what's going on in the city. And what we're also seeing is that there are 1 to 2 cases in Westfield additional every day. And that's what came out at the meeting Monday night. But what was interesting is the age of the new cases are people in their 20s and 30s. It's not typically what you saw before.
Right.
And so, and that's what has me concerned too. There's people say, kids don't spread it, kids don't do that, but that's not what I heard Monday night. And And I think, that's important. This virus has changed. Pete, would you say it's mutated already? Is that fair to say?
Well, it's probably got a little bit stronger as it's gone through the low hanging fruit.
Right.
So now, and also you're seeing the exposure populations, from what I've been reading and seeing, is that these people, young kids, think that they're immune to it completely, so they're going to parties and things like that, where they're doing long exposure times and probably getting heavier viral loads. That's why they're getting sick.
Right.
If you get a light viral load, if you pick up something from a surface, you're not going to get as sick as if somebody sneezes in your face.
Right.
Right.
And
that's the difference.
And I do want to say, I remember being in my late teens and 20s. Didn't you feel invincible, Harry? We all felt invincible. And then then we got old, and now you no longer feel invincible anymore, right?
Right.
You realize
you feel the aches and pains.
Oh,
right.
By 40, I'm not 50 yet,
tough.
but I think
Yeah,
this just gets
wait till you're 50.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, some of us are well past that. I don't even remember it.
Some of us will be that next year.
Right. Susan, I want to go back to the Chromebooks for a second. I'm fascinated with the fact that anybody that needs one can receive one. How do parents make that connection? How do they? Where's that transition happen? How is that connection made?
Well, the survey is going to give us information, because that question is in there about the device. Maybe you just need a device. And in the spring, families were trying to be conservative, and that was a good thing, because we didn't have as many Chromebooks as we now have. So they were sharing among families, and that might have worked better when the guidelines only required 3 hours a day,
right,
and they were able to juggle with a home device. But our goal is 1-to-1 this fall for our students, by the time we're all into the hybrid model. So we're not restricting this to one device per household.
So to give it perspective, last spring we gave out 1,600 Chromebooks. We expect probably to give out that again, I think, somewhere in that range, depending on the results of the survey. And it's also, I'm going to keep going back to this, another reason why we need parents to fill out this survey. Because if they need a device, this is a place to tell us. The other thing that's on this survey that I didn't mention is food services. So, because for the students that are remote, we're going to continue to provide, our plan is, if we can do it, to continue to provide the grab-and-go meals for those students that need it. But we also want to know if when they're in school, will the students be taking advantage of school lunch? Because that's going to help us to determine, listen, we have how much supply food we have to buy for people.
Right.
And I know that some people will change their mind, but if at least it just gives us a starting point to look at,
You've mentioned the survey. Is that an online survey?
It's online, and I sent it out. The link was in the message that I sent out to families. So all we have to do is click on the highlighted area.
Okay. So
I even put a little click on this link in the letter. And sometimes you just have to. You know?
No, I get it. I completely get it.
And then I posted it to our Facebook page. And what I have to say about our Facebook page is, our posts are reaching 5,000 people.
Wow.
It's become, and our kids don't use Facebook anymore, but our parents still do. So our students are, what is it, like Snapchat and Instagram? I think those are the latest.
Right.
I just saw what I don't even know what TikTok is. I just saw that yesterday for the first time. So
yeah, Twitch is getting old too.
What is
Twitch?
Right. Yeah. So the kids are way ahead of us,
right.
but it's the parents that I'm trying to reach.
Right.
So Facebook
Right.
is our strongest mechanism to do that.
Right, but if a parent if there's somebody who says, I can't access that survey in any of those ways, they could call their child's school and talk to somebody about how getting the link emailed directly to them. Or with our other surveys, I completed surveys online with people, with them telling me what they wanted to put on the survey. So if you have not been able to access this enrollment verification, then you can contact your school or the district offices.
And we'll get you there. But it's also, I posted it last night, Susan, on our back to school information page. So you can also click it there.
Well, I think that's why I wanted to ask you about this, because this is key. This survey.
We need this information. It's critical.
This is busing. This is classrooms. This is groupings with teachers.
Right.
This is Chromebooks. It's everything that you need to get started and to make sure that the students are as seamlessly integrated into the next school year as possible.
You know, and you mentioned transportation, why that's so important, and Susan was talking about the way that they're planning it. I think people have to remember Westfield is huge geographically. There's a lot of roads here.
We're the second or third largest city land-wise in Massachusetts.
And so, you know, I used to talk about this in terms of snow days. You know, the weather in Wyben, where we are, is different than what's happening in downtown. It could be snowing in Wyben and raining downtown. If it's snowing in downtown, Harry, you and I are definitely getting snow. There's no question about it. But in terms of the driving and trying to get kids to school on time, I think there's some geographical strategies going into the planning for transportation as well, because there has to be. Like Susan was saying, we can't be zigzagging all across the whole city. It takes too much time.
I've been thinking about the busing part of it, and Susan, I said, boy, am I glad I don't have to handle that nut. That is just huge when you think about trying to coordinate, siblings, which kids are where, bus stops, who's on this week, who's off that week.
And walkers, because at first people said, oh, well, the walkers could be placed in any cohort. And that's not true, because most walkers have a sibling. Well, any walker that has a sibling has to be connected to that rides a bus. You know, if you walk to Abner Gibbs, your sibling who goes to the
high school,
intermediate school gets a bus.
Right.
So it's all these interconnected pieces.
You know,
it really is a puzzle.
I have to ask this question. It just dawned on me, and it probably, Stefan, you probably haven't even thought about it. If you have to call a snow day,
I've thought about it.
Some students that are in the school that say, yay, I don't have to go to school, and then others who are remote. Do they have a snow day, or are they
so you're hearing it here first. Are you ready, Pete? This is a hot off the press. Here we go.
This. All right.
We have, but the state has decided and agreed with our superintendent request that if there's a snow day, that day goes remote for everybody.
Goes remote for everybody.
So there are no snow days.
Oh, so no snow days
next year,
wow.
which is wonderful for me, not having to get up at 4 a.m.
Right.
But on top of that, we think it just makes sense, because if half their district is already remote, they would just continue as usual.
Right.
Now, where that might be different is if we have like a blizzard of 78 where power's out and there's multiple feet of snow, and that's different. But your typical snow day will not necessarily happen.
So the upside of that is that
seniors.
We'll see our students getting out. We'll see our students getting out earlier in June than they normally would have, because
June
we always
15th is the last day right now,
versus the 20th or 25th or something.
Exactly.
Okay, that explains.
Great question.
Yeah, it just happened to dawn. Yeah, thank you. It dawned on me. But of course, you've thought about that. Let's start getting a little specific here. Face coverings, social distancing with students when they're in the school. How are you going to manage that? How are you going to enforce that?
So those are great questions. And right now we have a policy going forward to the school, a proposed policy going to the school committee Monday night. We have a meeting coming up this Monday night. And the policy that we are looking at came to us, and all school districts received a generic policy from the Mass Association of School Committees to look at, and we sent it to our legal department, and they have already sent back some recommendations. But the recommendation is that for grades 2 through 12, mask coverings are required for everyone. And grades pre-K to 1, they're strongly recommended. But not necessarily required. And we know that we think, I don't know though, because I'll be honest, I've gone to Camp Shepherd with Susan and the Boys and Girls Club with Susan. We went on some road trips, and the younger kids seem to have no issue with face masks. Where we're seeing some of the complications is actually with the older kids who don't think they have to wear one.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's coming right from home, by the way, with that piece
right,
there. So
right.
So we're looking at clear masks as well, because when you're teaching reading and so on, and in phonics, right, Susan, you need to be able to see. So we're looking at clear masks. We've gotten some samples. I'll be honest with you, the samples we've gotten are garbage. So we're starting over, meaning they're cheap, they're cheesy, they're not going to last. So the guidance from DESE, and when we're adopting that piece, is we would prefer, obviously, that parents send their students with a mask from home. But we will have extra masks on hand for students that don't have it, or if something rips, tears, whatever reason it gets damaged, we will have enough for supplies for staff and for students. So one of the things, too, that people have to understand is, because we've received questions about face shields. Well, all the research is telling us that a face shield is not a replacement for a mask. So if you don't like to wear a mask, a face shield is not a replacement.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yes. So, and Joe Rouse from the health department is where he has seconded and third that motion that it is not the same. You can wear both, but the mask is actually your best protection that covers your nose and your mouth. But we've ordered enough PPE supplies to get us through January right now. And much of it has arrived and is actually sitting in the gymnasium at Westfield Middle School. So that's where it is. So we have the supplies, and we also know that some staff are going to need additional supplies depending on, like, some may need gowns, shoe coverings, and the whole gamut, depending on students that they're dealing with, or if they're dealing with a case of a suspected COVID case in the school, they need to be fully covered. And our custodians are needing additional cleaning equipment as well. And we have ordered, or in the process of ordering, most, if not all, of what we need. Our struggle, though, is with those clear masks, because we just need a quality product.
Yeah. Is there going to be hand sanitizers in every classroom, or just in the hallways? Or
both, and all of our bathrooms. This is a good example too. They're going to be cleaned probably 4 times a day. That was our discussion. And I think, so we have different schools too, and I think that's important. And so, we're aiming for 6 feet, but we can't do 6 feet separation at Abner Gibbs. And so, I mean, I think you've been inside, the classrooms are very tiny.
Right.
So when you think about that, so the guidance is saying that students can be seated 6 feet apart without a mask, and anything less than that, they have to wear a mask.
Okay.
The other part is getting 6 feet apart for lunches and so on. So we are, we're still negotiating those kinds of things in terms of where the students will be eating. Optimally, we'd like them in the cafeteria. But again, Westfield High School cafeteria, for example, is much larger than Abner Gibbs's cafegimatorium, which is one of my favorite words to say, by the way.
Say that fast 5 times.
Yeah, no kidding. But it's like it serves 3 functions, and it's pretty small. So, we are going to have phased lunches. Whether or not students are going to be eating in classrooms is still to be determined. How we're going to do that, we know that our teachers deserve, but also have, a duty-free lunch period, and so we want to honor and respect that. And those are things we're talking about with the teachers union right now. But And really, our teachers union, it's been fantastic. Our teachers want to come back. People think I think I've seen some posts. I've seen some posts praising teachers, and I love to see that. I hate to see the ones that villainize teachers and go after them, because by and large, our teachers absolutely want to come back and be with kids.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
that's why they became a teacher.
That is, and we know that our kids, and Susan said it earlier, and I'm echoing it again, our students learn better in person. Yes, they can still use technology, but that face-to-face interaction, the social interaction too, is key, especially in the younger years in terms of social development and how to interact with other people.
Let's talk a little bit about what if a student is diagnosed. First of all, are students going to be checked when they come into the school?
So the Mass DPH has said no, that is not necessary, and the temperature piece too is not necessarily effective. And the other thing, and these are some of the things that we have to think about. And I realize it's going to be a little bit of a downer to talk about this piece too, but the state is the policy. We're relying on parents to send their students to school healthy.
Healthy, Yep. Okay.
And so there are no checks. I mean, if a student reports symptoms, we have a COVID room where they will be isolated, and then we call Joe Rouse, and then there's contact tracing and all that other stuff. But, it's important that our parents realize you can't send a sick child to school. But we see it happening all year before this all started, where parents have sent a student to school. And I hate to say this, and again, this is a little negative, but some parents will say, I have to go to work. Take 2 aspirin that knocks your fever down, and here's 2 more. Take them at lunchtime, and you'll be fine. And I realize that they have to go to work. But if it's COVID, it's a little bit different than if someone has, although the flu is contagious too. So it just doesn't help us out in this particular situation. Because what happens is we have to do contact tracing. And I think you've seen some schools that have closed that have opened in the South already.
Yes, right.
They're closing because the spread has become unmanageable. And that's what I'm afraid of. And we need parents and to cooperate. And I realize it may be inconvenient for them, but if a student does have COVID and then spreads it throughout a school, we have to close the school. And I don't want to do that. But again, and that's why I think it's important to have a very good partnership and relationship with your local health department. I was surprised to see that some school districts didn't even seem to consult their health department when they came up with their plans, actually. And for us, we've been in contact with Joe since the get-go. And I'll take the opportunity, as he did Monday night, because even when this started in March and we had no kids in schools, our nurses helped the health department, our school nurses helped the health department with contact tracing and so on, and they were on the front lines with the health department assisting. So kudos and a shout out to them for doing that, because it's not like the health department has a legion of nurses at their disposal.
It's one of the things I do like about Westfield is that everybody helps one another.
Yes.
It's all about the team effort, and you cannot expect that you're your own fiefdom and you're going to have all the answers and the resources and you're just going to go your own way. You've got to look at how do I bring in everyone else to ensure that what we're all doing is coordinated, that we're using the best information possible to get the best results. And that team effort is really key. To that point, that was a perfect lead-in, Harry. I read about the fact that you are talking to the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, the Athenaeum, I think,
yes,
about possibly having students in those facilities.
So
what is that all about?
We are actually putting out a request for proposal, and it is to offer some sort of support for students and for parents who are working and won't be able to have their kids at home every other week, but also for students who might need support if they're on an IEP and they need someone to help them get through the work. So we're not going to have the staff to be able to run this ourselves because our staff are going to be doing other things. But the Y, I think maybe the Boys and Girls Club would be a great partnership to open up to be able to take that, to do that. So we have more information coming on that. The Athenaeum was a little more restrictive, so I don't think we're going to be able to pursue that avenue.
Okay.
But the other two are a possibility. We've even looked at space within even the Westwood building where my office is located to rent. So that's a work in progress, and people would be surprised the obstacles that we encounter. But wherever we're putting students, if it's a Westfield Public School run program, we have to follow guidelines A, B, and C, whereas the Y and I think the Boys and Girls Club have a little more flexibility, and we'd be willing to pay them to run those programs for our students. And again, it's a work in progress. I can't guarantee that it will happen, but that has been on my radar since early July. And Susan and I have made road trips to talk to people and see what we can get happening, because I realize that's a need. But I also have to emphasize to people that the schools are responsible for educating children. That is our responsibility. And I feel for families that have issues for childcare, and I really do, and I understand that that's a problem. But my top priority is educating the students. And I realize that's not going to be popular, and I'll probably get slammed for that later, but it's just that we are not daycare for the city of Westfield. And with my top priority being keeping everybody safe. I have to lead with that in mind first. But it's not to say I haven't thought about the child care issue, and because some of our own teachers have children that either are in Westfield or in districts that may not be able to come to work for that. So we really are trying our butts off, to make this work because we want to make this work.
Right.
But sometimes my hands are tied beyond things that I can control.
Yeah, right. You've got to focus on what your primary responsibility and your.
And I feel like I feel like I'm pretty thoughtful in terms of trying to foresee what problems will be coming at us, and we do try to solve most, if not all, problems, and sometimes we just can't.
Right. I do feel for the families, though.
So do we.
It's really tough, especially for parents that have to work, and even for parents that are working from home now. And you hear that all the time, where they just can't. They're not as productive because they've got the kids running around, and they're trying to manage the kids. They're trying to manage their job, and it's basically like summer. It's basically a continuation of summer vacation.
It is, but I will say that, the parents in a lot of ways have found something in the summer now.
That's my point. That's my point. You have to think about it as, what are you doing with your children in the summer, and you kind of have to go on that same.
And then someone asked me, because we are taking attendance, and I know Susan mentioned that earlier, but someone said, well, I work all day, and there's no one here to make sure that my kids, who are middle and high school, are going to do all their work. How will attendance be modified? And my answer to them was, listen, our teachers are pretty flexible. And I think you reach out to the teacher and explain your situation, and we'll figure it out. We are not here to penalize people. We want your kids to learn. And I realize that that's not always going to be ideal during the day if the parent is working. And I'm not saying that, I realize coming home at night from work and having to work with your child, but, these are extenuating circumstances. And whether you believe it or not, we are still in a pandemic.
Right.
We are. And so to me, if that is what we have to do to keep our kids safe rather than exposing them to obviously the virus, then that's a risk that we need to take for them.
Yeah. Susan, you may have mentioned this, and if you did, I didn't pick up on it, and I apologize for that. When we're talking about, I want to go back to the full remote versus the hybrid model. And, I'm fascinated with this idea of school within a school, where you've got teachers working with a separate cohort of students that are not going back. I was thinking about the staffing model that has to support that. Does that mean you have to have more teachers and more staff to do that? You're hiring more people?
Well, not necessarily, because that's part of that matching. So if we have 25 to 30% of our families are opting for the remote only, and we have a number of staff maybe equal to that are electing not to come back because of the medical concern or the high risk category,
or even childcare,
or childcare, then we're hoping to do a mapped. But it's also, teachers could be present in the school and still working with a remote class. So the teacher't have to be fully remote themselves in order to be a teacher of remote.
Because the students can remote into the classroom.
Well, and that's even another thing that is being talked about. How can that work for at least groups of students?
That's what I originally thought you were going to be doing.
That could work well for older students, and we are exploring it. It would require some additional technology, but it might be the thing we need to do for certain groups of students. But the fully remote environment would be it could look like this is our fully remote school. And it has teachers working at every grade level, because I'm sure we're going to have students at every grade level. The state has relaxed restrictions, anticipating the need for this. The state has actually relaxed restrictions on certification. Now, it is certainly our strong intent to have every teacher teaching the courses for which they are highly qualified, but it's an example would be a science teacher who may be more of a engineering teacher, but picking up a physics course because the need is there. So we're going to be able to do that. And it may be that we have 5 first graders from Paper Mill and 10 first graders from Munger Hill and 5 from Southampton Road. That could be a remote class. So it is not necessarily that there is going to be a first grade at every school that's remote.
I got it.
That we're making these classes, as Stefan said earlier, these can be fully subscribed classes, 20 students, because we don't have in first grade and 24 in grades 3 and up, we don't have the restrictions of the hybrid model of only having 10 to half of the students there at once.
Well, and you know what's nice about like our elementary is just their certification is usually more broad. It's where you get to the high school where the certifications get specific. Like I was a history teacher, grades 5 through 9 and 9 through 12, right? That was my license. And social studies teacher 5 through 9, 9 through 12. I had 4 licenses. But now the state is saying it used to be you could teach 20% out of your certification area, and the state threw out the other day, it's as much as 50%. And we realize we're going to do the best we can to match up the highly qualified people, but we also have to do what we have to do to make this work. So what's interesting, and I hope people understand, is stuff that we're telling you today could change tomorrow, Harry.
Yeah,
I need you to understand that, right, Susan? Things
Absolutely.
we're telling them today could absolutely change by tomorrow.
On a dime.
But the amount of work that we have between now and the start of the school year is phenomenal, and it's tremendous. And so I want to point out there have been a lot I've received, and I know Susan has too. We've received a lot of positive feedback. There are some that are parents that are a bit grumpy, but the large amount of feedback is people realizing the amount of work that we did just by listening to our planned presentation the other night. I mean, we've really thought about so much. Did we miss a few things? I'm sure. But we have been working at this really nonstop. And, if you think of a typical 40-hour work week, we haven't had that since probably ever. But, we're working a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, my day starts at I'm at 5:30 a.m. most days, and I'm, responding to the litany of emails that I receive, which I love receiving, and try to respond to each one individually, by the way. We're at night or to school committee meetings till 9:30 or something like that. So our days have become very long, and I don't want to come off like I'm complaining. That's not the point. But I just want people to understand
there's a lot of effort.
This is just a lot of effort. This is an incredible task.
Right.
And Susan, I don't know if you'll say it, but this is probably the hardest I've had to work, or the most we've had to work in our careers.
Yes, I've said that to people. In 28 years, I have never experienced this kind of just forward motion, total, complete engagement at every minute of the day,
Right.
trying to field, we're at the same time we're trying to develop the plan, we're trying to answer people's questions about it as well as we can. But, I keep saying, okay, I just need to be locked in a room. Give me, 6 hours to
without
just
non-interrupted.
focus on it.
Right. I know
So
that's tough.
it's hard to make
Right.
it all work, and all of Stefan mentioned the negotiations. That takes time. We're going to end up with a much better plan because we're taking the time to do this, and we're in collaboration with our teachers and custodians and secretaries and everybody.
Food service, yeah,
So
all
it's
of it.
important work,
Right.
but it's time-consuming work, and the clock is ticking because
Right. It
September
is.
14th, August 26th will be here before we know it, and September 14th will be here, and we've got to get it all in place. So it's definitely a summer like no other.
Well,
in
essentially,
education.
Oh, there's another quote.
yeah. Well, you're reinventing the wheel, and that's the thing. We're starting to run short on time, but I did want to ask about high school athletics, the music programs, choirs, bands.
So right now, and Susan, correct me, because I believe they're saying, so remote is remote, but when we have in person, they're saying that band and choir should be outside, correct? Is that
Yes.
pretty much it? But
And that's so for safety, and because they need to be spread much further apart
right.
than we could accommodate indoors.
Can they be
And
like in
so-
a huge auditorium, or is that not
yeah,
allowed?
eventually, right. As long as we're spread apart 14 feet.
Right.
So smaller groups of musicians, but bringing the whole band together, that will happen outside. We're talking with our lead music teachers about that. We had a curriculum summit the last 2 weeks where groups of teachers, grade levels, and content area by department were able to meet, and we do that through some grants, and the feedback has been really great. Teachers feel more confident. They are ready to welcome our students back in whatever way we are, for as long as we are, as we transition. But one of the things we're also doing, those bells and whistles we mentioned earlier, smart music has been a tremendous asset to our music department because it allows, it's a program, web-based, that allows students to play along with pre-recorded material and sing along with pre-recorded material. And our music educators were amazing at getting the students together on the Zoom or Google Meet and having them play together. But instructionally, especially for our newest learners, fourth graders that are just learning their instrument, this smart music is going to be extremely beneficial for the students on those remote weeks and when we're starting fully in that mode for most of our students. We are paying for that in part through that grant that Stefan mentioned. So it's connecting all those dots, finding out from the people that were in the trenches what worked, what is the important thing that you need to be able to do this well in a remote environment, and then finding those funding sources and pulling that together.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, unfortunately, our time, we could go another hour.
We could go on for another hour
we could go
or two,
another
I
hour,
think.
but
Yeah.
I think for the sake of Pete and all of our listeners, we're going to let you go. But, I've really enjoyed this 2 hours. I've learned
Which
so
felt
much.
like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it does. It goes by really, really fast. So much information. And I want to commend the two of you and the rest of your team because, as you point out, you're a team guy, and it's a team approach. And, city departments helping out here. It's the custodians. Absolutely. It's the food service. It's the bus contractors. It's everybody working, teachers, administrators, support staff. It takes everyone to make this happen because we've never been through this before. But you know what definitely comes across, Stefan and Susan, and kudos to the rest of everybody that's involved with your team. You care about kids. Kids come first. We're concerned about their safety, but we're concerned about their education.
Right.
And we are committed. I'm speaking for you.
Yeah.
We are committed to ensure that they get the best education possible. And here's the plan. Will it change? Will it be tweaked? Absolutely. Expect that this is a living, breathing entity that's going to continue to evolve. But know that we've got people who care and people who are committed to doing the best job they can to ensure that our students are not detracted from their learning, that they will get the best that they can be. Susan, I'm going to give you 30 seconds for a quick message to everybody out there, a little pep talk or send-off message.
Goodness.
I know I'm putting the pressure on you here.
Okay, well, first, I did want to say thank you to you for being one of our biggest advocates in spreading this word to everyone, and it feels like you're like a #1 fan of the Westfield Public Schools.
Yay, I am.
Nice. But I think the message that I would send to everyone is that know that all the things that you are wondering about and worrying about, the team of people that Stefan has assembled to tackle this are wondering and worrying about those same things. So we are on it, and we are going to do what we need to do to make this the best experience for students, families, and staff that we can.
Love it.
Well said.
And Stefan, I am sure as we go forward, I think we've been together now 3 times with you and with Susan and other members of your team, some of the principals and stuff. But I think going forward, you'll get your superintendent spotlight show going again. And
I want to get
that's
that
a
going.
weekly, and so people will be able to tune in and get the most information they can from that. And so what's your quick message to everybody?
I want people to understand that we are working very hard. Please be patient with us. And I know you want answers. In some cases, you want answers to questions that we don't have the answers yet, but we will get there. So again, know that our top priority is the safety of our students and staff, and that is going and of course educating our students. So please be patient with us. Don't hesitate to reach out to our central office team. We respond to everyone. Pay attention again to our school committee meetings. Our next one is this Monday coming up, and it starts at 5 and we'll go till 6:30. 2 separate meetings, but it's again about the mask policy, which so people will be interested in that. And if there's anything that we can do to help you along the way, if there's anything, we will do our best to help. It always brings, and I said this at graduation, it's the we in Westfield. And I know that may be overused, underused, whatever, but we have to work together on this for the sake of our kids.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I've always spelled Westfield HOME, home.
Yes.
And it is about our home, and, I use hashtags a lot on Facebook, hashtag love my city, hashtag civic pride. This all applies. But, I just want to say thanks to our listeners and viewers out there for tuning in to another great show with Rock on Westfield. This was a combined edition with the Superintendent Spotlight, and certainly want to give special thanks to Director of Curriculum Instruction, Susan Dargy. Susan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I've been
It
so
was great.
impressed with you as I've gotten to know you better over the last 5 months, and our great superintendent, Stefan Zaporowski. We're just fortunate to have someone that really cares about their community, cares about students, cares about staff, cares about people in general, and that comes across with you. And then certainly thanks to our great producer and mastermind, the man behind the buttons and in the control room, the
kitten of the keys.
Yeah, the person you don't see, Pete Coles. But I just want to say, Westfield, just know that your students are going to be taken care of the best that they can be. Parents, stay tuned. Follow the website. Get on Facebook. Make sure you get that survey taken care of, because that's the key as I'm sitting here listening to it.
August 21st is the deadline.
That you need to have for your busing, for your classrooms, for Chromebooks, everything else that you need. Stay informed. That's the key. Stay informed. With that, I'm Harry Rock. Wear your face coverings to help us stay safe and bring this horrible virus to an end. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Back here where we need ya. Back here where we need ya. Yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. 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 We always could spot a friend. Welcome back. And I smile when I think how it must have been. And I know what a scene you were learning in. Was there something that made you come back again? And what could ever lead you? What could ever lead you? Back here where we need you. Back here where we need you. Yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we something that made me come back again. And what could ever lead you? What could ever lead you? Back here where we need you. Back here where we need you. Yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. Yeah, we tease him a lot. Welcome back, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back, yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the